Next guest, the 150th pick, the 5th round of the 2011 draft, and we still miss him here in Vancouver. Happy New Year. How you doing?
Happy
Frank
New Year.
Corrado.
Yeah, I'm good, guys. That seems like such a long time ago. So much has happened since then, but nice to be back on with you guys. It's been a while.
Well, great to have you back. How are you finding this broadcasting world that you've stepped into, buddy?
Yeah, you know what? It's given me a greater appreciation for everyone that's involved, all the work that goes in, and but it's been, you know what, to go from playing straight into this, couldn't have asked for anything better. And the opportunity on the radio side of things, the TV side, it's all kind of been, there's differences between the two of them, but it's been awesome to kind of get involved and sink my teeth into it.
Before we get into some analysis of what's going on with the Canucks and elsewhere, tell us how you got here, because for some people, they may have only caught a glimpse of you doing TSN work. You finished off in Europe, and injuries ultimately taking its toll. What brought it all to an end?
Yeah, that's kind of the way it is. Like, if I could still play, I probably would still be. I've just had, like, it seemed like as soon as I got traded to Pittsburgh, I was just every year was having a major injury and a surgery, and tried to go over to Europe and play over there. And my last year in Riga in the KHL, it just got to the point where, there was a game in Moscow we were playing, and I kind of said to myself on the bench, like, I'm in so much pain right now. I can barely move. I got to get off. I got to get off the bench. I got to get off the ice here. So my last game ever was in Moscow. And from there, I actually came home with the hopes of maybe rehabbing fairly quickly and going back and playing the season, but it just kept prolonging. And it seemed like, every time we addressed something within my hip or my knee, it was like something else kept popping up. And so I just, I guess you could say it was fluky that I got an opportunity with TSN Radio in Toronto, and that kind of led to some TV stuff, and kind of spent the whole summer training with the intentions of maybe going back and playing. And as work kind of kept heating up, and I kind of, you look at the risk reward between playing and kind of pursuing this. And it's kept me really busy. It's kept me in the game. It's kept me in the arena. And I'm very fortunate to be doing what I'm doing.
They still need you, by the way, the right shot defenseman.
What? It's crazy. Like, every team, like, how have they not solved this around the NHL? Every team needs a right-handed defenseman. I don't know. Like, what's going on with this?
All I know is you don't put 22-year-old right shot defenseman on waivers at the end of training camp.
Well, I mean, the crazy thing, and I'll be the first one to admit, I don't know if I've ever admitted this on Vancouver radio, I had a junk training camp. I had a brutal training camp that year, but we had just gone to the Calder Cup playoffs, and like we went to the finals, and then it was like I had like a separated AC joint, I had a broken bone in my hand, and I was trying to play through all that. By the time training camp came around, I had like just gotten cleared, so I had a junk training camp from a junk summer, and you know what, I got I guess. At the time when I got picked up by Toronto, it felt like it was a bit of a second life, but we know how that kind of went down. So it wasn't much of a second life. It was more like a slow death. But it kind of went down that way.
Well, Frank, first of all, first time you've admitted that, like, I'm not sure you understand how much your scenario, your lot in life here with the Canucks and that day in October 2015 still resonates with Sekeres and Price listeners, because it was the beginning of what are they doing with their assets here? Like, how are they managing? Like, there must have been a trade that they could have executed if Frankie wasn't a part of their plans.
I also thought, like, looking back at it, like, if maybe there would have been a situation, teams like to utilize that conditioning stint, and Toronto utilized it with me too, right? To send me down, get some games, and just kind of prolong things. Listen, the year before, right, that year I was up with Vancouver for more than half of the year. I only played 10 games, partly because I got hurt. I had that torn oblique that I missed 4 or 5 weeks with, but I was also healthy scratched a lot then, so it wasn't like I got to Toronto and I was new to being healthy scratched. I would get called up all the time and not play and kind of watch. And it was like, the year before with Torts, say what you want about Torts, but he only called me up if he was going to play me, right? He would talk to me face to face and say, yeah, you're going back down to the minors because you're going to play. You're only going to come up if you're going to play. And so I just think for a young player, like I see it now with young guys, and I'm like, how are teams still making that mistake? Like why not just put guys in situations where they're actually going to play, whether it's the minors, whether it's the OHL, WHL, whatever the case may be. Like young guys at that age, you need to find your identity as a player, and you can lose it fairly quick.
Willie still had the Twins hitting on pretty good cylinders. Not all cylinders, but the Twins were still the Twins in your final year with the Canucks. He just needed to win. And do you get the feeling he just didn't want to put his trust into a young kid to help him get there?
Yeah, for sure. And Willie was an interesting coach. And I remember having a skate in the summer back here in Toronto with someone who had played on his team in Texas. And, when you see a coach from the AHL coming up to the NHL and wins a championship, you're thinking, oh, this guy's got to be great with young guys, right? Like that's what you kind of think.
You're right. We hear it. Yeah.
Right. And so I was asking one of the guys, he's like, he went very veteran heavy on that run to the Calder Cup finals, right? So, and I get it from a coach's point of view too, right? Like everyone has an expiration date in the National Hockey League, and you want to do everything you can to stick around as long as you can. So there is a balance between the two. It's hard to fault a coach for wanting to win games, and every coach, that's all you're graded on as a coach, right? Is the 2 points you get at the end of the night. You don't have goals and assists to fall back on. So yeah, I can understand.
You got a great education in this, Frankie. Should that change? Like, should any is that a it's not really Moneyball, but revolutionary kind of way of thinking in sports? Should the AHL team be purely about development? And if you win, great. It gives you some experience in how to win. But, should they really guard against winning at all costs at the AHL level?
This may be an unpopular opinion with some people, but I would actually disagree. I would say that you need to instill into your young players that winning is important, because then you kind of build this culture that, not to say that winning doesn't matter, but it's like, yeah, you're just going out there and you're kind of playing and we want to see your individual performance. Like somewhere along the lines, you need to instill in young players that there's a purpose behind what we do, and ultimately it is winning. And so, if you can insulate those young players with some guys, like a guy like Nolan Baumgartner is like the perfect example of someone you get your young players around, because he was skilled enough to play, obviously, and lead. But like the lessons that you learned playing with Bomber were so important, because, he had been around the block. He had success individually, team-wise. And so, you don't want to abuse that, obviously, but at the same time, turning players into, and this is such a cliche, and I hate that I'm going to say it, but turning players into like quote unquote winners, right? Like that kind of goes a long way. So you can't go completely one way, but you also can't go completely the other way, because I think you do players a little bit of an injustice by just saying, it's purely developmental. Well, guess what? Like winning is the ultimate goal, and that's part of development.
I'm not surprised to hear you say what you said about Tortorella, from Kessler to Ballard. We've talked to many ex-Canucks about that Tortorella year, and the one common theme is just how honest he was with players. And look, players appreciate that. Like, I know you've referenced Moneyball already, Blake, but that scene from Moneyball where, players appreciate the truth, even if it's between the eyes truth.
I'll tell you two examples. Okay. So the first example, and I don't know, were you guys doing the post-game shows back when I was playing?
Blake was.
Yep. Okay. So
Blake sure was.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure it was you and I, Blake. It was after a exhibition game against the New York Rangers, and that would have been our last preseason game. And I scored a goal. I had an assist. It was my best game of the preseason. And we did a post-game interview. I'm certain it was you. And you said, great job out there, all that kind of stuff. And, we hope you make the team, and we're pretty sure, you probably will. Something like that.
I remember it.
Okay.
Yep. I think I said I'll see you in a week or something like that, like in the regular season. Yeah.
Yeah. So something like that. And I'm not even kidding you. 30 seconds after that interview ended, it might have been J-Wall. he goes, "Hey, Torts wants to see you." So I walked into Torts' office, and he sits me down. He looks at me right in the eye. He goes, "All right, you're going to Utica." Just like that. And I was like, all right, okay.
Wow.
And he goes, "Listen, you had a good camp. It's all good, but you're not going to sit around as the 7th guy or the 8th guy. And, you're just too young to kind of play limited minutes in the NHL. You're going to be down there. You're going to play. Travis Green's a really good coach. You're going to play all situations." And he goes, "When we need you," and he goes, "we probably will need you at some point. You'll be coming up. So make sure you're ready." And I really, I appreciated that he kind of broke it down for me into that perspective. And I'll be the first one to tell you, coaches don't necessarily owe you anything, right? It's their decisions along with the GMs, and you as a player, you kind of need to just respect that and go about your business. But the fact that he just kind of laid it out there, very simple and direct, I really did appreciate that. I wish you could have been in the room with how, emphatic he was that I was going to Utica, almost to really drill it home, "You're going to Utica." But it was a positive.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it was very positive. And then we had, it was interesting. I would get called up that year, and I really had to earn the trust of him and Sully. I don't know if you guys would even remember, I was playing 5, 6, 7 minutes, in those first few games when I got called up. And then there was a point there where I started getting up to 11 and 12. And I'm like, okay, that's a little more like what I was used to the previous year when Bonus was running the D, right? And so I got sent down. It was Alex Edler who was coming back from injury. We were on a flight down to do the California swing, which used to be in Gauntlet, as you guys remember. And I take a nap on the plane, and there he is again, J-Wall, my guy J-Wall, just delivering me the bad news, taps me on the shoulder. "Hey, Torts wants to see you at the front of the plane," right? So I head over there. Torts sits me down. He goes, "All right, you're going back to Utica." He goes, "You did a good job." He goes, "By the way, I have a clip in our video session today where you did so-and-so really well." He explained the video clip. He goes, "Do you remember that clip?" I go, "Yeah, I do." He goes, "All right, well, I'm going to show it today in video, and you did a really good job there, okay? Safe travels to Utica." And I was like, all right, that's, but that's the kind of stuff, the kind of candor that you appreciate about Torts.
Yeah. He gives you're going to Utica as though you're going to Disneyland or something.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And with the parting gift. But you made video session.
Yeah.
Good for you.
You made video. You held your ice. You did something well, and everyone's going to see it, and you'll be on a flight to San Antonio.
So you mentioned things that you had never said before to a Vancouver audience. I've never told this story, and I hope you don't mind, but October 6, 2015, the day you're waived, I get a call that night from an unknown Toronto number. It's you. I don't think we had ever talked on the phone before. You had done the show before, but we didn't sort of have any kind of rapport or relationship outside of, the few times we saw each other at the rink and on the phone. And I remember you were sort of looking for answers. You were a little shell-shocked with it all.
Yeah, for sure.
And I remember you asked me, "Do you think I'll get claimed?" And I said, "Frank, based on the conversations I've had tonight, I think you're absolutely going to get claimed." And I think we even talked about maybe Toronto, your hometown team.
Yeah, we might have.
If I'm not mistaken.
I just remember being in the market and having, I don't know what it was. I feel like I had so much support from people, and yourself, you guys, Botch was another guy, rest his soul. He was always an advocate for me. So, I don't know. I feel like as players, we don't need to be so guarded against our local media. I feel like now that I'm kind of not necessarily a local guy, I am in a way because I do the local Leafs broadcast. I do the pre-games, the intermissions, and the post-games, but you kind of want good for these guys, man. You want them to play well. You want to be going, covering the playoffs, deep into the playoffs. So now I feel like I had a little bit of that perspective as a player, and now being on this side of the microphone, I really do see it. No one wants to be ripping on guys in the media. It's not a great feeling, right? But at the end of the day, as a broadcaster, you need to be credible in your job, right? And you have to kind of call what you see, call a spade. But yeah, I did always appreciate the fact that there was a ton of support, and you guys were very much at the forefront of that.
Well,
which is an interesting nuance of Torts. We've talked a lot about Torts. Not a great broadcaster. For some reason, that straightforwardness that you got behind closed doors, he would never bring it on the air.
Yeah, I don't know. So I didn't get to see much of the ESPN stuff because like we don't really have it.
Yeah, we didn't get access.
But
yeah.
I love the fact that every once in a while you almost forget about Torts and Philly just because they're not a great team. And then he just kind of creeps in with a quote, right? And then there he is calling it a young, dumb league, or, early on, it's like they're asking Torts, like, is there any redeeming qualities about your team? No, none whatsoever. It's so good. Like, it's so good when he's a coach.
The trademark honesty. And hey, I will share this as well. A couple of Februarys ago when 1040 went down, one of the first guys I heard from was Frank Corrado, and as a matter of fact, Frank's pop Sal sent over some sauce.
Yeah,
so
we sent the sauce over.
Very
the
kind.
Yeah,
absolutely.
The sauce has put on some miles, man. It's seen some postal codes over the years.
Yeah, I'm sure. Let me ask you this: 35 of 42 healthy scratches when you go to Toronto. Did Babcock screw you? Like, does your career happen differently if Mike Babcock is willing to play?
You can always play the what if game, right? Like, you can always say, but the fact of the matter is, after that, you do control a lot of your destiny, right? Like, you're still a hockey player after. You still, can make good of whatever situation you're in afterwards. I will say, like, I definitely struggled with it. I thought at the time I was a mature kid, and it turns out I was a 22-year-old dummy. Like Torts likes to say, it's a young, dumb league. And so, not that I was dummy, but it was hard for me to kind of manage that, because I feel like the biggest issue that came with was losing my identity as a player, and didn't necessarily know anymore. Was I an offensive guy? Was I a defensive guy? What was it that made me good, that brought me to this level? And I think, like, for guys that have played a long time, let's say you played 5-6 years in the American Hockey League, you finally worked your way up to the NHL, and you got there, and now you're in that 7-8 spot, you're in, you're not in. Like, you have a good base of what you are, and you've worked your way up to that position. Like, I think at 22, it's not a good spot to be in mentally, and then as far as your game goes. And it's just one of those things that dragged on way too long. We probably could have, called it sooner than that. Like, for me, I'll tell you from my point of view, like, being a Maple Leaf was the coolest thing I could ever imagine. And so, part of me is really wanting to hang on to that the entire time and say, no, this is going to turn around. I'm going to play here. This is where, this is where I live. This is where I'm from. I grew up, obviously, a fan of the team. And so, that's, you really want to hold on to that. So there's a lot of sentimental value. And also, with the way things went down in Vancouver, I wanted to be that guy where it's like, dude, just shut up, do your work, and be a hockey player, right? Like, just be the most low maintenance guy. Don't say anything, and go do your business and try and become a player. Like, I remember getting picked up thinking, wow, like, I'm going to play. And this is me being naive, not knowing anything around the league. Like, wow, I'm going to play for Babcock. Like, this is unbelievable. Like, I just need to be a sponge, soak in whatever this guy's telling me, and this guy's going to turn me into a player. Like, that's kind of the mindset you have going in. So it's very optimistic. And then, so it would be a very quick turnaround to go from that to, in 35 games, can you guys get me out of here? I hate this. This is not going in. You know what I mean? So you're really holding on to that mindset the whole time. And then, going to Pittsburgh was great. And that's kind of when a different set of kind of mental hurdles happened with, long-term injuries and not being able to stay healthy. And then that's just like a different kind of mental battle, because as much as, you lose your identity as a player when you're healthy scratched, it really messes with you when you're on the shelf and you're rehabbing and you're, you can't make any kind of headway after 2 years of not playing. Like, try and imagine the frustration where, you just went through a year and a half of not playing because of someone else's kind of decisions, and you had no control over it. You finally get this second life, or this third life, if you want to call it that. And now you're like, I can't stay healthy. I can't play. Like, how how's this fair? Like, I have no control over that. So that does something to your psyche as well. So it was, I mean, listen, from the day I left Vancouver was a battle in certain ways, but the mental battle that pursued afterwards of things that are kind of out of your control was pretty crazy.
There's a handful of players from the 14-15 team that are active in the National Hockey League, but only one is still with the Vancouver Canucks, and that is the captain, Bo Horvat. And he is on a career pace. I'm sure you have seen from afar how he is ripping up the league this year. Well, let's start there before we get into the psychological impact of what he's been through since you last were in a dressing room with him. Can you take us to what the player that you saw in 14-15 to the player he is now? How different is that?
So we were doing drills one day, Bo and I don't know if he was a healthy scratch or I don't know what the deal was. We were doing a drills after practice, and it was me, Bo, and Dougie Lidster. And Dougie was going to come check us, and we had to work through the check and get to the net. So I went, okay, no big deal. And then Bo goes, and he kind of like bulldozes Dougie. And Dougie kind of looked at me. He's like, that guy's a bull, man. I'm like, yeah, he is, right? Like, he came in and he was a bull right away. But just, the maturity on Bo really stood out when he was a young player. And you could tell like a lot of the older guys in the room really appreciated that. And I mean, a lot of the guys in the room that were part of a, pretty awesome leadership group had pegged Bo to be the next leader of this team for a long time. And so it's not a surprise that he has done so well and flourished in that role, as a captain. But to see the improvement in his offensive game year after year has been really impressive. And listen, this is a team, quite frankly, that hasn't had a plan, a direction, a roadmap for success. And this guy, despite all that, has been nothing but a great soldier for this team, a leader for this team for a long time, and has been such a low-maintenance guy. When do you ever hear Bo in the news in any kind of way except for, oh, there's Bo, he scored another goal, or there's Bo with a big performance, or there he is in the bubble, or there he is visiting the children's hospital. You know what I mean? Like, he's such a well-respected guy, and he really... he deserves any kind of accolade that he gets, whether it's from fans, media, or players around the league alike.
Doing commercials with Connor McDavid for heaven's sakes.
Absolutely. Look at that.
Yeah.
Your old roommate, he's done okay here. Lastly, because I know you cover a lot of junior hockey and we're all fixated on the juniors here. Frankie, what do you make of this Connor Bedard kid?
Unbelievable. Like, he really is. So, like, I'll take you back. So I went over to Sweden to play. And Connor Bedard, it was during the COVID, no one was playing. So he came over to play for HV71. He played a handful of games on the under-20 team. And that would have been before he got his WHL start. And they were talking about him. And they were like, this kid is unbelievable. He just looked like a kid out there. He had the cage on. He looked a little smaller at the time, a little skinnier. But he was so good. Then you see, like, okay, he comes over to the WHL and right from the drop of the puck just fills the net, gets a ton of points. It's come to the point now with this Team Canada team where, I mean this, like, with no disrespect to any player, but it's like it's the Connor Bedard team. Like, that's what we're watching. We can't wait. We're captivated every time this guy gets the puck, every time he's on the ice. And he's... The word everyone uses is special, but he really is special. And I mean, I'm wondering what team is going to get him, because he's going to turn a franchise around. Like, he's going to be a franchise player. He's doing things at the World Juniors that, Craig Button was saying today that we haven't seen since Gretzky. We're not talking haven't seen since McDavid or haven't seen since Crosby. Like, he said Gretzky, and it's true. So, I mean, is he a North Vancouver guy? Is that?
Yeah, he is. He sure is.
Like, that's, I don't know, man. You gotta, I think if you're a franchise, you gotta be thinking, why are we not trying to get this guy? And I understand only one team. Like, listen, one team can get this guy, right?
Yeah.
It's not gonna, you have to still win the lottery. But at the same time, even if you did try and get this guy and you kind of offloaded pieces, and let's say you didn't get him, you offloaded a bunch of pieces. You got yourself a bunch of futures. You know what I mean? And you tried for Bedard in the process. So, I mean, there is, in some ways, a consolation prize. I think more teams than not, if you know you're out of it and you have no chance, are just going to be thinking, let's do what we can. And worst case scenario, yeah, we got rid of some older players, some veteran players. We got some picks, we got some prospects, and we're going to, I don't know, try build for the future.
Frankie, marvelous stuff, my man. We always knew you had the gift of gab, but this has been a pleasure. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for your time, and we'll catch up soon here.
Let's do it again soon.
Yeah, thank you. I can't wait for something to pop up on my Twitter feed, so we'll see. Because you know the way, Canucks Twitter is something else, and they like this. People here in Toronto kind of ask, like, they think Leafs Twitter is crazy and intense, and I'm like, guys, you have no idea what Twitter is like unless you have spent time in Canucks Twitter, because there's a hot take, there's an opinion, but then there's the facts, there's the video, there's like, it's so dialed in Canucks Twitter. So shout out Canucks Twitter.
It's something else is a good way to put it, a polite way to put it.
It's quite an ecosystem we have here.